Hello everyone. Right now we are going to do one question of relevant costing which pertains to this chapter, which is minimum price. In minimum price, let's understand what's the question saying first of all. The question is saying that LB company has been approached by a customer to manufacture a specialized machine. This would be a one-off order which LB company would undertake in addition to its normal budgeted production. The assistant accountant has prepared the following quotation: direct material, aluminium plating, which is 20 meter square at the rate 10 per meter square, and rivets, it's 100 at the rate 1 each. Direct labor, skilled labor is 50 hours at the rate 16 per hour. Semi skilled is 20 hours at the rate 10 per hour, and overheads are 100. Administration overheads at the rate of 10% of the production cost. Profit is at the rate of 20% of the total cost, and here it comes, and then we have the selling price. Before reading the notes, I would like to read what the question is asking. The question is asking about preparing a relevant cost basis, the minimum price which should be quoted for this for the job. Okay, so okay, we need to find the relevant cost. Okay, and here we have been given notes. The aluminium, I think aluminium, note 1 pertains to aluminium plating. Yes, the aluminium plating is regularly used on another other work within the business. It has an inventory of $10 per meter, although the current purchase price has recently risen to 12 per meter square. So the quotation which was given by the accountant, if you can see the quotation which was given by the accountant, it was at the rate $10 per meter, and the requirement was 20 meters square. Okay, now if it's saying this 10 per meter square, this is a sunk cost because this cost has already been incurred, right? So we do not need to focus into this $10 per meter square. Instead, what we need to concentrate is on the current purchase price, because the requirement for the aluminium plating is 20 meter square, and the relevant cost for this will be 12 meter. Now you will again ask a question that why we didn't take, because $10 cost is the current cost, and this seems to be irrelevant because this is something which has already incurred, right? So this is a sunk cost, and therefore I would say, let me open notes. Just wait. Okay, so now let's start doing this question. It's a very good question, and it can also come in your section C as well. So for this, what I would say is that you should write the material cost. So it should be the material cost, and the material cost, first we have the aluminum plating, and the cost of aluminum plating should be 240 divide not 240. How did we calculate this 240? Let me explain you first. I started writing directly. So it should be 20 meter square is your requirement, and the relevant cost will be over here it is given that the aluminum plating is regularly used on another work within the business and it has inventory value of 10, so this is something which has already been incurred. So we do not consider the sunk cost for relevant costing, and instead we will always consider the cost which we can incur in future. Okay, so the cost which can be incurred in future is 12 now, because that is the current market price. So 20 into 12, which is 20 into 12 is 240. Over here we have 240, and after that we have rivets. For rivets they have given us note 2. I'm sorry, my handwriting is really bad, please spare with it. So for rivets, now rivets, they have purchased rivets at the rate of 100 rivets at the rate of $1 each. And for this there is second note which has been given. Rivets are currently held in inventory and cost $1 each. Other, although the company has no further use for them, they could be sold to a scrap merchant for zero point 0.5 each. So rivets are currently held in inventory and the cost of one rivet is $1 each. Although the company has no further use for them, they could also be sold. So they have no use. Okay, so if they have no use, then the cost of rivets should be what? The current requirement is for 100 rivets and they can be sold. For the scrap value for them is 0.5 each. Okay, and there are not in use. So there are two categories of raw material. First is they are in they are idle. If they are idle, then they do not have any relevant cost. But if they are not idle and there are limited resources available, we need to think that either if they are in currently use or not in use. So if they are currently in use, then we will take the market price which we had taken in the case of aluminum plate. But in case of rivets, they are not in use. If they are not in use, we need to consider the scrap value. So 100 at the rate of 0.5, it will be 50. Okay, now direct labor. We have direct labor. If there is direct labor, the direct labor is skilled labor. Skilled, if I need to see what is the cost of skilled labor, so the skilled labor is 50 per hour. So 50 hours at the rate of 16 per hour. 50 hours at the rate of 16 per hour. So if it is saying me that I need to see 50 hours at the rate of 16 per hour, and there is no 3 given, skilled laborers are paid dollar skilled labor are paid $16 per hour and are currently fully utilized on other work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime. Okay, we need to read this all over again. Skilled labor are paid at the rate of 16 per hour and are currently fully utilized on other work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime, paid at a time and a half, or reduce the production of another product which earns a contribution of 20 per hour. So currently, the skilled labor is having a limit of 50 hours and per hour rate given to us is 16. And as per the note 3, the per hour rate is 16 only. And if a job is undertaken, this labor is now being utilized for some other work. Okay, and that other work would, if the labor is engaged in some other work and that work is generating a contribution of 20 per hour, so we need to consider that contribution as well. because this is something that the contribution would have to be sacrificed if the labor which is engaged in some other work is diverted from that other work to the this project which we are talking about right now in this question. So then that contribution of $20 would have to be sacrificed. So first thing is that we need to include this $20 contribution for our relevant cost. Now another thing is that they are saying that they would pay 16 per hour and are currently fully utilized in some other work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime. A maximum of 40 hours of overtime. Now if they are working on overtime, you only think that they will be paid 1.5 times of 16. So what is 1.5 times of 16? That is 24. Okay, so that is 24. But now we need to say that what is the cheapest option, because over here if I see, they have an option. They have kind of an option. Either they would like to divert this labor from some another work and engage to the current project, or they would hire some labor, and that would be paid an overtime basis. So if they are paid on an overtime basis, they have option one. Either for labor, I must explain you, for skilled labor what the thing is. For skilled labor, let's see, they have one option. I will read this note 3 once again. Skilled labor are paid $16 per hour and are currently fully utilized on other work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime. So currently the labor is engaged in some other work, so they have two options. Okay, they have two option 1 and option 2. So they have, either they work overtime, okay, either they hire a labor, or I would write it more clearly, more specific. So they would hire labor and make them do overtime. Okay, either they would hire this labor and they would make them do overtime, because the requirement is what, 50 hours. The requirement is of what, how many hours? It is of 50 hours. So the question has stated if the overtime would be paid more than 40 hours. If the labor is made to work more than 40 hours, they would be paid an overtime of 1.5 times of the current wage rate. Okay, in this case it would be 1.5 times of what, the current wage rate, which is 16, and therefore we get 24. This is option 1. Option 2 says, if you divert the labor from another project to the current project, then the contribution which was being earned in that from that other project, that $20 would have to be forgiven. Okay, so in case of that, what can we do? If it is done, first is the wage rate is 16 plus the contribution sacrificed, which is 20. Okay, and now we have 36. So what is the cheapest option? I feel that hiring new labor would be a better option. So if you hire a new labor, then what will be your cost? It will be 24. But if you divert your labor from another project to the current project, your wage rate is 36 per hour. So how many hours are required? 50, right? So let me calculate. So it is 24 into 50, 1200. But okay, so another thing is which I need to mention you all over here is, I just didn't read it properly. It says that skilled labor are 16 per hour and are currently fully utilized on another work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work on a maximum of 40 hours. So one thing is, like, if we totally, take this, I explained you option 1 and option 2 very well. If they hire new labor, then this would be the wage rate, and if the labor is diverted from the another project, then this is the wage rate. Now another thing you can think is, okay, now they have diverted, so we will multiply into 50, both the options we can multiply by 50 hours, and we can see what is the cheapest one. But now if we read the question properly, if the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime. Okay, so the wage rate for 40, how much, 40 hours, how much will it be? So currently they have 50 hours available. They need 50 hours actually. They need 50 hours, out of which 40 hours are there. Okay, and 10 hours are extra. Okay, so 40 hours are already over there. So 24 into 40, it will give you 960. And then for 10 hours, the wage rate would be 36, which will be 360. Now you will be saying that why didn't we multiply 50 into 24 when this 24 was the cheapest option? Then why didn't we multiply by 50? If you multiply this by 50, you will get 1200. Okay, and if I multiply 36 by 50, I will get 1800. But this is not the correct way. Why? Because the availability, the requirement was for 50 hours, and as per the question, the labor which was engaged in some other project seems to have maximum availability of 40 hours. So if the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of 40 hours of overtime, and or reduce the production of another product which earns a contribution. Okay, so the maximum hours that labor could contribute was, so in this case, skilled laborers are paid 16 hours and are currently fully utilized on another work. If the job was undertaken, it would be necessary to work a maximum of, yeah, so it says that 40 hours are available. 40 hours are clearly available with the labor, right? And more than that, it is extra which is required, that is 10. So the cost of 40 hours, we have calculated the cost of 40 hours will be this 24, because it is already working this 40 hours, if we'll make them work, okay, then it will be at an overtime. This 40 hours already includes overtime, and we have calculated this cost. So there was option 1 where you can divert the whole labor from that current project and make them do overtime. But when you make them overtime, the maximum limit is of 40 hours. Okay, so if you divert that labor, if you use that option 1, how much they cannot work for 50, they can only work for 40. Okay, they can only work for 40, they cannot work for 50, they can only work for 40. So you need to multiply 40 with 24, which we have done over here. Okay, so since I would write over here, since the labor engaged in other project can work for 40 hours, hence we can only consider cost till 40 hours from option 1, and remaining 10 hours will be calculated based on option 2. That means 40 hours cost will be at the rate of 40, that is 960, and the remaining 10 will be calculated at the rate of 36, which will be 360, and then you get your relevant cost of labor as 1320. Okay, so the skilled labor cost is 1320. Now let's come on unskilled labor. If we talk about unskilled labor, semi-skilled labor, not unskilled, this is semi-skilled. And if we talk about semi-skilled labor, it is 20 hours at the rate of 10 per hour. And for this fourth note is given, the current there is 100 hours of ideal semi-labor time available. 100 hours are ideal. That means what will be the relevant cost for ideal? For ideal there is no relevant cost. Okay, so for ideal capacity there is no relevant cost, so the relevant cost for semi skilled will be 0. Now let's talk about overheads. For overheads, they have given note number 5. Overheads represent an apportionment to cover the factory fixed costs. So factory fixed costs are not covered under the relevant cost concept. Fixed costs are not covered under the relevant cost concept because they are not incremental in nature. Then we have administration overheads. Administration overheads, and for administration overheads, they have given us note number 6. It is the policy to add 10% to the production cost of each job to over the administration cost of orders accepted. Overhead, administration overhead is at the rate 10% of the production cost. Administration overhead is 10% of the production cost. So will you consider this administration overhead? No, we shall not, because administration cost will be incurred regardless whether or not the job is accepted or not. Administration overheads is not something unavoidable, is not something which we can avoid. Okay, I mean to say administration cost, whether the factory, if for example, if you have a company, you are in some management team, you are in an administrative department. Okay, the receptionist, the manager, the accountant, and the assistant managers, the accounting team, the finance team, and various other HR. These departments, the labor, the workforce working in such departments will always come whether or not there is demand of the product or not, whether the product is being manufactured or not. So the relevant cost for administration cost will be 0. Okay, so this is something really we need to understand. We need to practice a lot to understand what cost needs to be added and what not needs to be added. Okay, and then we will total the entire cost which I have calculated to 240 plus 50 plus 1360, and it gives me 16. I've done some mistake, I guess. 240 plus 50, 1320, it will give me 1610. Okay, so this is my relevant cost. Now it also says minimum profit of 20%. Is that required? No. Why will we calculate profit? This is not required. We are just talking about relevant cost. What we are talking about? Relevant cost. The minimum cost. Okay. So we do not need to calculate the profit percentage.